Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast. I'm founder and CEO Jim West, and today we have a wonderful guest that's going to talk. We're going to talk about a lot of different things, but I'm going to start off with there's a whole long list of accolades and titles for this gentleman here. So his name is Ross Young. He's a CISO, but more importantly than that, he's an author, keynote speaker. He covers topics from AI to all kinds of cybersecurity topics. We're going to be talking about his podcast. We're talking about a wonderful website with great free templates and resources that are actually useful, folks. I know a lot of times when we hear about, oh, free template this, free template that, it's kind of like techno music. About 99% of it sucks, but the 1% is good. This is part of that 1% that's good, folks. So anyhow, without further ado, Ross, welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast.
Hey, thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here, and I'm just grateful to share some expertise and help the listeners. Thank you again.
Well, it's wonderful having you here. And when you talk about expertise, I mean, again, we're going to again talk about these templates and we're going to talk about your podcast. But let's start with what is the why? I mean, everybody nowadays got a podcast. I mean, I got a podcast and I never thought I was actually ever going to be a podcast host, but everybody has a podcast these days. Why your podcast? Why CISO Tradecraft?
Yeah, so the thing I found was I really wanted good mentoring. So, how do I, if I'm a director at some company, take the steps that I need to grow my personal career to become a first-time CISO? And that is the whole reason we created CISO Tradecraft. The CISO Tradecraft podcast isn't news. It's not just random vulns. It's what's the tradecraft you need? What are the soft skills you need so you know how to have an executive presence, how to brief leadership teams? What are the things you need to know about standing up a program in AppSec and GRC if you're going to run those? What's the metrics? What's the things you need to understand when the legal is asking you about how do we set up our AI security program? What we're trying to do is bring the tradecraft so someone who doesn't know these things can learn how to run these programs. That's the focus of the podcast there.
Got it. So speaking of that, someone listening right now is like, I'd love to be, CISO, CISO. I say CISO, but that's because of cyber security. But if someone's listening right now and says, "Well, I want to do what you guys do," right? And I know it's much more complex than just saying one, two steps. But what would be like if you said the easy one, two, three? What would that be at a very high level?
The first thing I would recommend is everybody going to the CISOTradecraft.com website. On there, you're going to see a tab that says episodes. And if you scroll through there, what you're going to see is this picture, and it has about 10 different domains from business management and leadership, defensive technologies, governance, risk management, product security. And what I would say is out of those 10 or so domains, pick two that you think you are the weakest in. So maybe I grew up in the SOC and I don't understand all the laws and regulations because that's somebody else's world. But I
Okay.
know if I want to be a top tier CISO, I got to learn that stuff. So then do a deep dive on the episodes that are already categorized under that domain and gain those skills during your exercise or your commutes to work. And that's a great way where you don't have to listen to the 5 years of episodes all at once. You can find the ones that best help you in your career.
Wow, I love that. And when you mention YouTube videos, I always joke with people when they talk about learning something, whether they're preparing for an exam or learning any kind of new skill. I say, hey, you got to go to YouTube University, right? Because that's where all the videos, and most people, most of the population are visual learners. But you do mention like when you're driving to and from, that's what the beauty of podcast is listening to it in the car when you're going to and from work on your lunch break, etc. So, you do this podcast. There's another person here, right? There's a co-host. There's a co-founder of CISO Tradecraft. Could you talk a little bit about that gentleman?
Yeah, so his name is G. Mark Hardy, and I couldn't be happier with the partner that I found to do the podcast. So at the time, he was teaching all the SAN security leadership classes, and I thought,
Oh,
who better to help partner with me so that we can do this podcast together? And if you ever listen to his voice, you'll hear he has this really deep, amazing radio voice that I don't have. So I think he's just an incredible individual who's had a wealth of experiences. So kudos to G. Markardi.
so you kind of sound like he's the yin to the yang. He balances the force, if you will. So,
Yeah,
uh,
definitely. Like I came from large enterprises and he's been more on the VC, so small enterprises. So
okay.
definitely that yin to my yang, if you
Good
will.
merging of knowledge and background. You mentioned he actually taught the SANS security leadership, so that would be the GIAC GSLC, which is one of the certs I got, folks, and it's a very good cert to get and good training too, as for security leaders. So I love that advice about going to the podcast videos and find the one with the domains and pick your two weakest ones. And so, folks, you probably are saying, what if I'm not a good judge of what I'm weak in? Well, I'll try to include some links for some free assessments and things that I can find on the internet. That'll be in the description below. But the CISO Tradecraft site and any other links that we're going to talk about, I'm going to save you guys to Google search. Everything will be in the description below. So you can just pause, check out the description, click the links, check them out. I want to jump over just to a recent publication that you've done. So you've become an author, so congratulations. And
Thank
could you
you.
tell us about the book Cybersecurity Dirty Secret?
Yeah, so when I stepped into the role as the CISO, what I found was the role wasn't challenging from me from a technical perspective. I already knew more cyber than the CFO, the CTO, the CIO. They weren't going to have things I couldn't know from the cyber perspective. But what I found was really tricky was the budgeting perspective, right? Hey, I could talk to them and I could get a budget, but what's the best way to present my ideas? Hey, how do I actually work through the procurement team so I can get things, actually added as new products that I wanted to deploy? What happens when I had to deal with master service license agreements and all of that terms and conditions in these, technical contracts? All of these things were things I didn't learn by doing a CISSP training or reading a book. I just didn't find that knowledge out there, and I thought, well, I need to be the one to share this knowledge with others so that they can learn from my experiences, and that's why I decided to write the book.
Excellent. What would be, I guess, a golden nugget that you could share with us that's in the book? Like if when you think about the book as a whole, I'm sure there's a wealth of information, but just what's one nugget you can share with us from the book?
Yeah, the one I probably get the most grins and giggles out of when I tell people is I created a cybersecurity tools murder board, right? And basically what it is it's a tools rationalization exercise. Because I find one of the biggest things that CISOs screw up is they go into a new organization and they have their, first 90 days to kind of figure out what they're going to do. And they ultimately go in and they say, "Oh, tell me all the tools that we're using here." And we all have our personal preferences where we go in and say, "Oh my gosh, you're using that tool? Ugh," and now we go in and be like, "We need to switch to my favorite tools." And I think that's the exact wrong thing to do. Because if you go down that route, the first thing you have to do is go beg money from the CFO to switch tools. Versus what I prefer to do is to go into the organization and say, we're going to actually do a rationalization exercise, AKA a murder board, where we're going to look at each of the tools by two things. What is the coverage and what is the utilization? And just think of like a data loss prevention tool. Is it installed on 20% of the laptops or 100% of the laptops? Makes a big difference. And
Mhm.
then the utilization is what percentage of the features are turned on? If there's 10 features I should turn on per the manufacturer, and I only turn on half of them, oh my goodness. If I have, 80% of coverage and 50% of the features, multiply those two numbers together, you'd be at 40%. And that's what I call an effective protection score. And now I use that EPS and I compare all the tools that we have in our organization to start to say, where are we not well deployed and where are we not well configured? And then ask the team, why is that the case? Did these
Mhm.
tools suck? Did we just start them last year and they're brand new and we're still rolling them out? Are they really challenging and having all these alerts and false positives? Can we get rid of them? And it really opens the right kind of discussion versus saying, go put in my favorite tools and spend more money. Because if we do it from the murder board perspective first, we can often get rid of three tools. And now we have the money to buy things without having to beg money from the CFO. So that's one of my favorite chapters in the book.
Well, what a powerful template to have a very logical and pragmatic approach to evaluating current tools in an organization. That is brilliant. So, folks, right there, a golden nugget already in that book. Gotta get that book. We're gonna have the link for Amazon for that book in the description below. Make sure you get a copy. And more importantly, when you do buy the book and you go through the book, please go back to Amazon and leave a review. Reviews are really critical for authors because it helps other people. Because when you're about to buy something, you're going to read the reviews. And when you read the reviews, if someone else says, "Hey, this book's actually pretty good," it actually, opened my eyes to things. And leaving a review is gold. And so please, if you do buy the book, please also go back and leave a very kind review. And I'm speaking as an author myself. Um, I
And
wanted
I'll
to
just
ask.
go into to add one more thing
Oh, go
here.
ahead.
These templates, they're all also available on the website in case anybody wants to try them. So even if you don't buy the book, you can get the templates. And if you love the templates, please support the author by, picking up the book if you don't mind.
Awesome. And again, that link will be in the description below to the actual page on their site for the free templates. There is a lot of free templates there, and I'm going to come back to that in a second. Um, the question I love to ask all my guests is the day one question. And what the question is if we could go back in time to the day one when you made the decision that you wanted to be involved in IT and cyber, what's the story there that you could share with us of your day one?
Yeah, so in my life, there's really two pivotal moments that I remember. The first, I was a junior in high school here in Las Vegas, and I went to UNLV, and they're like, okay, you can kind of tour the campus and figure out what major you should declare. And I knew I wanted computers because I always liked video games, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a video game developer.
What video games
And
did you like at that time?
oh, it was definitely like Command and Conquer and Red Alert, if you
Okay.
remember those old Westwood Studio games
Yeah.
that were out there. And so I went to the campus and I said, okay, what has computers in it? And at that time, it was computer science and computer engineering. And computer engineering, they take you to a lab where they have like breadboards, and computer science, they're like, oh, here's computers where you actually do software. I'm like, that's for me. And so I went and I did computer science from that point on. And then when I was a junior in college, then cybersecurity became one of the ways that you could emphasize in computers. And I just always was fascinated with like how hackers can break into computers. It kind of felt like, in Vegas where you have magicians, where if you learn how to do the card tricks, you can do
Yeah.
them yourselves. And so that's what just always caught my attention. And from that point in time, I kind of dedicated my career to, how do I get jobs at NSA and CIA and do offensive cybersecurity at places that give you just a rare glimpse of nation state hacking that you just can't do anywhere else in the world.
Speaking of which, and three-letter agencies, your profile mentions that you're a former CIA officer. Is there a little bit of a story you can share behind that?
Yeah, so I was fortunate enough to spend 10 and a half years there. I don't really go into my profile too much publicly, but what I'll say is I had the wonderful time to do project management, to do cybersecurity, to do offensive security, to do DevOps. And I truly love the mission of a company like that. It's such a wonderful place to be.
Wonderful. Um, Along your journey, and this is more the looking at your career as a whole, I'm sure there's been, a lot of people's careers isn't always just straightforward. There's winding paths and the choices here and there. But along that journey, I'm sure you've had either managers, colleagues, coworkers, or just other experts in the field that you admired and looked up to that had a positive impact upon you during your career. So the goal of this question is kind of shine a light on those folks that have been mentors or inspirations to you and positive impacts along your journey. So could you maybe name some folks that have been very impactful to your career?
There's been a lot of people who've really taken the time. So, for example, Bill Spalding at CIA was a huge mentor of mine when I had a lot of questions and I was growing up through at the time. A lot of times I've also really learned well from books. So another hugely impactful book on my career was Gene Kim's book, The Phoenix Project, and that really got me interested in some of the DevOps things that were starting to happen when I was leading DevOps at CIA, and how do I do, DevSecOps and some of these other things that are starting to emerge. So I've been very fortunate that I've had people who've helped me in my life. Certainly, your parents have been huge. My parents were amazing in my life. They helped pay for my college and get me the education that really gave me the opportunities that I have today. And I just can't thank my parents enough for taking time to help and raise me and give me the opportunities.
Excellent. During your career, has it been, one of those big, may have seemed insurmountable or an impasse, as some people call it, moments where you thought there's just no way I'm going to be able to get through this or get around these issues, and then fourth quarter, last second Hail Mary, you finally figured it out or found the tactic that finally worked and got through that problem. What was been one of the most challenging situations in your career? And could you share the story about how eventually you was able to work around it?
Yeah, so there's this concept in Japanese called ikigai, which is finding four things that are really, really important in your life in order to find your life's happiness or meaningness, if you will. And the four things to find your reason for being are something you love, something the world needs, something you're good at, and something you can get paid for. And this is where I often struggled in my life. And I'll just give you an example. I think, like most young kids, I was really infatuated with wanting to be a hands-on keyboard hacker, if you will, right? I loved it. Certainly, the world needs pen testers. Certainly, they pay for pen testers. But if I'm being really honest with myself, I don't think I was very good at that. I just don't think I am a super techie, hands-on person with super in-depth details of being a programmer, despite having gotten through computer science school. And it took me a lot of years and experience to be honest with myself to say, just because I can do this doesn't mean it's what I'm really good at. There's
Hmm.
just certain people in the world who are just fantastic cybersecurity researchers. I think of like the Dan Kaminsky's in the world, the Charlie Millers on some of the cool car hacks that they're doing. And what I ended up finding later on was I was actually really good at the CISO, the strategic, the frameworks, and while not as sexy, is just as important because, now you're making $1 million decisions and really helping organizations grow. And so that was my big aha moment was some of the things that I just truly loved wasn't what I was going to be good at. And you can just think of like, I'm never going to be an NBA professional basketball player, no matter how much I want and I desire it. At 5'10", it's not in my future, right? And so I think we have to find those little moments in our lives in order to figure out where our greatest happiness really comes from.
Well, thank you for sharing that. Let's get back to some of these templates, and if you don't mind, I want to just kind of share my screen if I can, and just kind of just talk us through some of these templates because they're amazing, at least for me. And I just want to be able to just kind of show the visual. So I'm going to share my screen and here we are, and here it is, folks. It's CISO Tradecraft and slash free templates. But again, I'm going to have the link in the description, save you that. But here it is: secure, smarter, not harder. Love it with templates from CISO Tradecraft, and they're of course best viewed on desktop, laptop. But let's just the first one I actually found. I saw a post on LinkedIn that said "Busy is the new stupid," so that caught my attention. Great name for this one. So let's start with this one. What's the why behind "Busy is the new stupid"?
Yeah, so in my book, I came up with a chapter, and in the chapter, I use this phrase, busy is the new stupid. And somehow this term just really resonates with everybody. They just love this terminology of busy is the new stupid.
Hmm.
Basically, it's the following. How do we make sure every hour in the day that we're using is maximized for producing results, not busy activity work?
Hmm.
And what are the ways that people steal our time and make us less effective? And you can
Hmm.
just see here how I kind of mapped it to the MITRE ATT&CK framework.
Yeah.
So, hey, they overload our calendars, they overload our emails, they make everything urgent. And suddenly we're busy, chasing our tails with all these things instead of what are the most important things I need to do right now to secure this
Hmm.
company. And so it's a wonderful framework to just kind of get you thinking about how can I work smarter this year versus harder.
Hmm. I love it. And you provide great defense principles. You provide so much perspective and insight here on how to mitigate, just like the MITRE ATT&CK talks about, right? And then let's just jump down to defense evasion, boundary erosion, the work-life balance right here. I love that. priority confusion, where things just feel like you're never going to get there, never going to get it right. So I love that. And I love how, again, you have the mitigation strategies and you have the defense principles here. Again, wonderful work here. And that's just, again, just one of the many templates here. So we're going to jump back here and just quickly let's kind of so CMMC, a lot of small to medium businesses as well as large businesses, but particularly small and medium businesses are having a lot of challenges doing CMMC. So why make a CMMC reference guide?
I maybe it's me, but I hate having to like go and search in this website, get the PDF to quickly look up, one of the controls and figure it out, or how many controls do I have to satisfy in order to meet the advanced level of things?
Hmm.
I just wanted a way to make that simpler. So if you look in this dashboard, you'll go and you'll see every one of the controls. If you
Hmm.
hover over any of the controls, it actually
Tells you what
gives
it
you the
is.
quick description. And then as you click each of them, you'll notice there's a little radar chart or a spider chart above that starts being filled out as you show your
I'll just do
compliance.
some
S-
random clicking here just to kind of see it start to create. Yep.
Yeah, so it's just a way where if somebody who's non-techie is saying, well, what do I have to do to be CMMC compliant, or what's the difference between foundational versus advanced level, you can quickly go and highlight and show this to an organization.
Well, I love that. That's again super easy, very intuitive. Before I know, I'm just clicking away. I'm able to see what the control is, as you said, and then I get a quick visual on where I'm at, and as it grows, as I go through the checklist. There's so many here, folks, and we're not going to have time to open up each and every one because I want to be respectful for Ross's time here. But let's jump to the one we talked about earlier, the cybersecurity tools murder board. So let's just jump into that real quick because. Okay, so take me through this murder board.
Yeah, so really there's two pieces to it. First is this coverage utilization. Coverage is what percentage of devices is deployed on, and utilization is how many of the important features did I turn on. And so what you do is you go and you figure out each of these things for all of your machines, right? So this is really important. If you think your let's call it CrowdStrike antivirus or EDR is on
Hmm.
100% of the boxes, and it says, hey, I have 2,000 boxes that it's reporting back on. But if you actually went and looked at the inventory from Intune and from all your other tools, and you figure out I actually had 3,000 endpoints, well, you'd only be on two-thirds of the endpoints. And
Yeah.
so that's a really big aha moment. And bad actors are able to disable some of these things, block the firewall exit rules, and all these other ways. And so I want to know if I'm being vulnerable. I want to know when my developers have turned these things off and I'm not as well protected as I am. And so you can start to tinker with these things. The other
Okay.
thing I will also say is a subtle thing. If you look on the left-hand side above just a little bit, see all those blue areas, Gartner?
Yeah.
This will actually take you to the Gartner page where you can view all the access management tools that are in, let's call it their magic quadrant, with reviews from various CISOs. So here's 128 access management tools you could pick from
Wow.
to find the one that works for your organization,
Wow.
right?
And so you're already leading people to the water. So I just noticed down here you can actually add from the library and you have a pretty good extensive library here, but you can also add a custom tool as well. And then you could type in what it is. I love that. Man, this is super clean. I mean, well coded. I mean, very clean. It's on very tight rails. It's super easy to understand and follow. You explain it up here at the top. Again, a excellent template, folks. As I said earlier in the podcast, I said, templates are like techno music. 99% of it might be trash and garbage, but this is the 1% right here. And again, thank you for making these free to the public and for people that discover this page. And I hope that you watching right now takes a moment, check out some of these templates. It could be a lifesaver. It could definitely, if not a lifesaver, maybe giving you a perspective that you didn't consider before, because that's everything. Getting a new perspective or approach to doing reviews and evaluating something, like just as Ross has done here for you, that is a very clear-cut perspective to have to help you make those decisions, because we all know IT cyber budgets are the first thing to get cut, to get, drained from, because there's other priorities in the company. So by using this, by redistributing funds from maybe one tool resource that's underserving your enterprise or company and putting it into something that's going to be more useful. This is where the magic is. And you mentioned you're from Vegas. This is the magic, right? This is magic, man. And so I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing because I want to get back to our conversation. But I had to show people these templates because it's gold, folks. This is pure gold. So I'm gonna hit the stop share, get us back on here on the screen. So thank you, Ross. I mean, thank you just from one cybersecurity professional to another. Thank you for doing something really what I think is amazing and making it free. Where other people would charge $1, $2.99 or whatever, you made it free. Thank you for doing that for the industry. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah,
So
and I'll just go ahead and say if you actually want to see how I use the templates, take a look at my book. There's different versions. The Kindle I think sells for $9.99, so any college student can easily afford it. There's paperback and hardback if you prefer physical copies, but it's kind of my way to give back and really help people figure out the best way to, do more with every dollar spent in cybersecurity.
I love that. And so, folks, please check out those links in the description. Ross, we could talk forever. And you know what? I'm already going to say this. Consider coming back on the podcast anytime in the future. Just message me when you got a next book coming out or even more templates down the road. I'm saying that, and we're not even towards the end of this podcast episode yet. And I'm just putting that out there, Ross, because again, I'm so impressed by what you've done with CISO Tradecraft. And so, folks, please check out that podcast. During the podcast with my guests, I used to do like a little break. It's kind of my moment of levity where I'll throw out some rapid fire questions. It's kind of take a little break from the tech and cyber talk for a moment. So I'm just going to hit you with some what I call real quick questions. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just for pure fun. So if you humor me, I'm gonna start with, is a hot dog a sandwich?
Is a hot dog a sandwich? I would say, yeah. Yeah, there's meat on a bread. Sounds good to
Meat
me.
on bread is a sandwich according to Ross. All right. This one splits the room for all IT cyber folks. So here we go. Star Wars or Star Trek?
I'm a Star Wars fan,
Star
definitely.
Wars. Which trilogy of the Star Wars franchise?
I know people are going to hate it, but for me, I actually like one, two, and three. It's the only one with large scale Jedi battles. So that's kind of
So
does it for
that's
me.
the Phantom Menace, right? With the Jar Jar Binks and Qui-Gon. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah. And the second and the third one are just really interesting. I really like them.
who's your favorite Star Wars character?
It's hard not to say Anakin Skywalker. You kind of see him go through the journey,
Hmm.
and the show really is based around him, at least for the first three episodes there, one,
Yeah,
two, and three.
awesome. Cake or pie?
Ooh, cheesecake is definitely a big one for me. I don't know if that's technically a cake, but it
It
sure has the
says
name
cake
in
in the
it.
name,
So,
but hot or cold cheesecake?
oh, definitely cold
Cold
cheesecake.
cheesecake. Okay. What has been your most favorite book of all time that you've read, and what was the last book that you've read?
For me, there's really two books that stand out. The first I would say is Gene Kim's book, The Phoenix Project. That one was a really, really good one for me. The other one that I would say got me really into my career, uh, and I'm sure this is one you don't really hear much about. It's How to Be an Economic Hitman, which really told me like, hey, how corporations are, bamboozling foreign countries and doing really interesting things. And that kind of got me into the whole espionage route and wanting to go into it. So it's called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Just a
Confessions of
great book.
Confessions of an Economic Hitman. That is a very interesting title. All right. Well, folks, we're going to have the links to the Amazon for those books as well as the Cybersecurity Dirty Secret book for Ross. Ross, a lot of us professionals, we're super busy. I mean, obviously doing the work that you do and, writing a book, becoming an author, speaking, and just being involved in all the things that you do. We do, as professionals, find time for what I call causes, volunteer charities, nonprofit work that's near and dear to our heart. Whether you give of your time, money, or energy, the goal of this question is really, is there a organization that's out there doing great work in the world? And it doesn't have to be tech or cyber, but just any organization that has maybe something that aligns near and dear to your heart that you just want to, what I call, shine a light on who they are, what they do in the world.
I would say OWASP. If you haven't heard of OWASP and cybersecurity, I'd be really surprised. But they're really
Mhm.
one of the things where everybody gives away freely, right? How do we make the world more secure? How do we teach people new frameworks? How do we standardize AppSec? How do we have top 10 lists? There's so much good things that comes from OWASP. And, I'm even an OWASP author of the OWASP Threat and Safeguard Matrix. I just can't thank enough what Jeff Williams and some of the founders of OWASP put together to create some of these cyber communities. That's a huge one near and dear to my heart. The other one I would say that probably we all use, but probably never actually give any money and contribute back to is the Wikipedia, right? How many
Yeah.
times have you
They're
searched
always
wikis?
asking for kind donations. Would you consider donating? But continue. I'm
Yeah,
sorry
do
to
you want
interrupt.
that page to be full of ads and run by corporate media, or would you
No.
rather just keep it the way it is and give, $5 to make it a little bit better?
No.
I think that's another great cause that we as society really benefit from.
I 100% agree. I forget how many years ago where the text version of Wikipedia would fit, I think, on a thumb drive. I forget how many gigs it was, not counting the media, of course. But it was interesting when people talk about doomsday scenarios, when you see people's kind of like a prepper list, if you will. If anybody was an IT cyber person at all, they would be like a thumb drive with the Wikipedia dump on it. And it was funny because it is true. There's so much information there that's something you definitely will have to be very useful in the future. When it comes to technology, and I know, working in a leadership role, you obviously get asked a lot of questions about emerging tech. And, the past several years has all been about artificial intelligence. And of course, now the conversation's creeping up where I find it humorous. And I'll say this to the chagrin of a lot of people on LinkedIn right now. But I've been talking about quantum since 2016, 2017. But it's funny, and I know people have been working in the quantum space since like the 60s and 70s. It's nothing new. But the conversation's slowly becoming dominated by quantum computing because we see announcements, new developments almost every other day now with all the different players that are in this space. So it's kind of like AI is still there, but we got quantum seeping in as the two top emerging techs, if you will. With that being said, everybody on LinkedIn seems to be an AI quantum expert all of a sudden overnight. But as a leader in cybersecurity, what are the things that you're seeing around us? What are the things that's interesting to you? Is the better question. What is interesting about AI to you? What is interesting about quantum computing to you?
Yeah, so it's really interesting that you bring up both of these terms because in my mind they couldn't be more different in how much I worry about them. AI is a massive transformation in how things are done. And I'll just give you one simple example. For 40 years, the way we would write code is someone would have to go learn to be an expert on Python, C++, some programming language, and then they would start writing code. And it took a lot of expertise to do that. And now the way we're writing code is not learning a programming language. The number one programming language going forward is English. We will go to Gemini, we will go to ChatGPT or Claude, and we will say, I want you to build me a website that does this.
Hmm.
And then it's going to spit back code. And you're going to say, oh, you know what? You didn't add this feature. You did this thing wrong. I want you to go do this. And it writes the code for you. And so now we are not writing software code, we're writing prompts
Prompts.
in English that become software code. If you look at all those templates on my website, that was all prompt engineered. And so I think that's a massive transformation because the way we do cybersecurity around code is very different when the developers don't even know the code that's being written.
Hmm.
So I think that's a massive thing that we're going to have to really think about what AI code security looks like going forward. Now, when I think about quantum, I think it's actually something not to be as worried about. So, what is quantum going to do? We're going to have bigger, faster, smarter computers that are going to be able to break encryption. And so, what do we do when that happens? We roll out a new encryption technique that is post quantum proof, right? So post quantum ciphers, and we're going to have to put it two places on anywhere where we save data at rest and everywhere we do it in transit. What's
Hmm.
that going to look like? I'm going to go to Microsoft and I'm going to say, I need a post quantum encryption cipher. They're going to go, here's three to choose from. You click that and you deploy it on all your endpoints. And then I have to do it in transit. So just like we had to make that let's say, shift from TLS 1.1 to 1.2, there's probably going to be a shift to 1.4 at some point in time, where the only ciphers that we allow are not these old RSA ones that are easily broken. They're going to be a post-quantum cipher that we're picking in the TLS certificates.
Hmm.
So I think these are things we've already gone through transitions and deployments. It's a lot of work to get a lot of teams to do it, but it's not the end of the world. I think it's very solvable, very easy compared to AI security, which is completely new and lots of new things we have to think about, like how do we stop hallucinations, right? That's something we haven't had to historically do in cyber.
Yeah. One of the things I'm actually doing a talk at a STEM Academy in next month, and I built a kind of like a Quantum 101 for those students. And in it, I kind of go with myth versus reality for quantum. And one of the biggest myths is a lot of folks believe that we're going to have quantum computers in every office space and so forth. And it couldn't be further from the truth. We'll still have classical computers. So, folks, quantum is not going to replace the general PC, if you will, the classical computers that we have out there. And those will keep getting faster and faster as well. But what I believe we're going to see is quantum as a service, your machines will tie into a platform that has quantum circuits or a quantum gate to where you'll be able to send certain jobs and routines to be processed there. But you'll still have, like, for your email, your web browser, you're not going to use a quantum computer to browse the internet, for example, unless there's a Web 5 or Web 6, whatever's beyond Web 3 that we can't conceptualize yet, maybe. But short of something sci-fi that becomes reality, I think in our immediate future, we're still going to have classical computers like laptops, PCs aren't going away. We'll still use those for general work, but there will be just like how supercomputers were integrated in Fortune 100s and then Fortune 500 companies, quantum platforms and systems will be integrated into those businesses for big data purposes and efficiency, supply chain, logistics, anything that requires optimization that needs large number crunching will probably be sent off to a quantum platform. So that's the first myth that we're not going to have quantum machines to replace our laptops and our general PC environments. That's not going to happen. That's not that first, even second, or I wouldn't even say the fifth wave of quantum computers. Another one is that, for example, when we think Google quantum computers, we see all these, gold-plated, these halo rigs, if you will, or refrigerator units is what they really are. And so what the people assume is that that is the quantum computer. Actually, the quantum chip or the processes happen at the very bottom of that lattice rig, if you will. And so that's interesting. The rest of that's for cooling because they have to operate at like near Kelvin or absolute zero temperatures. But so there's a couple of myths I just throw out there and so forth. Um, Anyhow, not to get too far off topic and go down that rabbit hole. What are some things that are coming up in 2026 for you, Ross? What is on the horizon? Is there another book you're working on? Is there a conference event where we can see you on stage speaking at? Is there a new business news thing you're launching or a new set of podcast episodes? What's 2026? What are your big goals in 2026?
Yeah, the first thing that I'm doing is I'm launching a startup in AI software compliance that we haven't really talked about. It's still kind of in the earliest stages, so I'll be going and seeking a seed investment round here very soon, and that's probably the biggest thing that's top of mind for me is to do that. The second thing is I'm actually going to be hosting, some CISO type conferences. So I'm really excited to, give some feedback and help other CISOs, and that'll be one of the other things I'm just really excited about doing with folks. Uh, the only other thing I would say is I'm just always looking for ways to give back and help the community. So this past weekend, I was trying to build some cyber simulation tabletops to help old people or seniors, understand the scams against them. Like, hey, I think we all have aging parents or aging grandparents. How do we keep them safe and secure? How do we make fun little video games to teach them things like that and use some of these, vibe coding techniques or other ways to help them? Or, how do I also make it into a kids video game because we have children or grandchildren that we need to teach them the first time when they're learning, IT and computers. Hey, this is how you stay safe on the internet. I think it's our role to really help both sides of the equations if we know and understand it and just try to be more influential.
Ross, if I could only ask ahead of time, when you do have those videos, games, or whatever the content is around that education, would you please come back on the podcast and share that with us? Because that's such a great topic, and it's a very underserved section of our community. You know, our parents, our grandparents, the elderly, and young children. You know, when we talk about like in business, the small to medium-sized businesses usually get overlooked when it comes to cybersecurity services and solutions and platforms because they can't afford that expensive stuff. Same thing with our elderly and youth. They usually get because we're so worried about businesses, corporations, and those are the folks that, you know, because talking to cybersecurity, we're preaching to the choir. Talking to younger kids that know about, you know, how to be a little bit more savvy and secure and aware, but the younger kids still haven't figured it out. They haven't become, and they're the most vulnerable because they don't know all the dangers. Just like the elderly is not aware of all the dangers and pitfalls. So if you would please, I would be honored to have you back just to talk about that content again.
Oh, thank you. And I just think of, my own kids, hey, I gave them a laptop, but did I go and teach them all of the cybersecurity things before I gave them the laptop? Probably not. I said, don't give your passwords away and, don't take pictures of yourself that and
Mhm.
send them to people. But I think we can all do a little bit more here. And, I would just hate for my parents to be the victims of an online fraud scam and
Yeah.
lose tens of thousands of dollars just because I never actually educated them on the threats that I know about that, they're in their 70s. They don't know these things. They don't, stay digitally savvy, but certainly we're seeing all sorts of threats and scams against old people. And I think that's just a really sad world that we're in today.
Well, you know, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So just spending 5, 10, 15 minutes educating somebody can save a lot of time, loss of money, and just the stigma of it, you know, because a lot of people they don't want to report it because they feel dumb. They feel like they're the dummy and they don't want to report it to the police, don't even want to tell their family about it. And so a lot of folks suffer in silence because of a scam or a compromise in their lives. Ross, I want to appreciate you so much for being on the Top Cyber Pro podcast. For all my guests this season, and this was not in the agenda question, so folks is going to be a little bit on the spot, but I know he's going to do fine here. But I give all of my guests the final word. Whether you want to talk about IT cyber, you want to talk about leadership, you want to talk about online safety, you can talk about your favorite color. Whatever you would like to talk about, the floor is yours, sir.
I think the biggest thing that I would say is I really want us to build communities. Too much do we do cybersecurity and then we go home and we do nothing more. We watch our TV, we enjoy, our books or other things like that. I think it's really important for us to join our local cybersecurity communities. There's always someone who needs a fresh start. They're coming out of college, they're doing a mid-career transition, and they need our help. And a little bit of mentoring, a little bit of coaching can be just that pillar of light to help somebody in their career. So find a way to connect, find a way to give back. And I promise as you do, you will be happier, will help more people, and will keep everything more secure, including our own data. And so I think that's just what we have to do as a cyber community. And hopefully everybody enjoys this type of stuff. I have CISO Tradecraft in case you want to see the things that I'm giving back. But, thanks also to you, Jim, and having a podcast to really go and share the message.
Well, thank you so much, Ross, and thank you for being on Top Cyber Pro podcast.